Welcome, everyone. It's really wonderful to see you here today and to be able to take a moment and just pause and take in a nice moment for ourselves and think a little bit about our relationship to our feelings. The way that we sort of often, as mammals, go about our day-to-day is one in which we're relational creatures. We depend on other people. Even when we come out of the womb, we're obviously very dependent on our caregivers in a way that, for example, a reptile may not be. And we learn how to co-regulate and how to attune with another person and they with us in our early life and even in our day-to-day lives today. The thing is, sometimes in our earlier lives, or even in previous interactions or relationships, earlier lives, not so much karmically, if, we're going to get into that, but more so in our childhood, we may have certain circuitry that's laid down in a way that maybe wasn't quite 100% attuned to the way that we needed to be felt, as Dan Siegel says, to feel heard, to feel known in a certain way. And that kind of misalignment or misattunement sometimes can leave us feeling a little like, ouch, there's a little wound there, a little place there that is tender within us. And to just sort of notice what it feels like when we kind of get in touch with that place can be really powerful, in the sense that we can recognize it as a place within us that is still needing and wanting a bit of attention that it may not have received when we were children, or even, currently there may be something that brings it up and kind of triggers it. And that when we're in that kind of a situation and we notice that something's going on that has kind of done an ouch to our inner parts, our tender parts, we can hold that feeling, that emotion, really that sensation, with mindfulness, with an opportunity to sort of, on the one hand, cognitively know that our way of responding to whomever it is that in our present day may not be currently as attuned to us as we might like to be. Maybe someone said something that was a little off-putting or not as thoughtful as we would like. Maybe our partner sort of insulted us in a way that seemed like it was kind of deliberate. And maybe they did, maybe they didn't. We don't know what their motivation was, but we also know that we also can look at ourselves and our own feelings and how they may be sort of manifesting, say on a scale of 1 to 10, as an 8 or 9 because of an old hurt or an old ouch that still wants to be seen and heard. And really, the present day, the current day situation is more like maybe a 5. Maybe it's not really an 8 or a 9. But we're really adding sort of to the story of what it means, or what we think it means. So, what to do, because we are human and this is a very human phenomenon. Well, when we're mindful of our feelings, which is really just a present, non-judgmental, accepting, moment-to-moment awareness of what we're being mindful of, which in this case is our feelings, we can not actually have to be overly identified and coupled with our feelings. We can pull apart what our feelings are, meaning that there is, for example, anxiety arising or sadness arising, and not equate that with I am sad, I am a sad person, or I am an anxious person. We don't need to add to the story there. We don't have to sort of go off and running. When we're mindful of feelings, oftentimes really the beginnings of it will arise as a sensation in the body, really just sort of a way of noticing that there might be a bit of tightness in our chest, or a little bit of heat perhaps, or a little bit of clenching maybe. And if we're mindful of that sensation, we can recognize that it's the sensation that is coming up, and not that, ooh, this is anger, or ooh, this is, resentment, that then has to overtake us. We can name it and note it, meaning that we can say, anger arising or resentment arising. But then we can kind of, because we're being mindful, be the witness to that, as opposed to being overly identified or coupled with it, and say, okay, well, that is a phenomenon, causes and conditions. It's a process that's arising within me somatically. And I know this because I'm touching into the sensation in my chest right now. But that doesn't mean that I have to over-identify with it and go off on some story about it. I don't have to then go and say, gee, I am this terrible, resentful person, and I really need to get over this, and I've been mad at this person for long enough, or whatever. We don't have to sort of go down that gravy train of despair, if you will. There's a poem by Rilke, the German poet, who writes really quite beautifully about what this sort of means, being mindful of what's arising. For in this case, sort of a feeling that we might want to push away or have less of. He says, I believe in all that has never yet been spoken. I want to free what waits within me, so that no one has dared to wish for may for once spring clear without my contriving. So really just sort of letting it be, not inserting our willful presence into something to try to make it be different than what it really is, which is that mindfulness. If this is arrogant, forgive me, but this is what I need to say. May what I do flow from me like a river, no forcing and no holding back, the way it is with children. Again, sort of referencing what in Buddhist circles they call, beginner's mind, don't know mind. Sort of letting go of our feelings or our perceptions or our ideas that we have about things, which, as I was saying earlier, can often be tied to something that happened to us earlier in our life when we're very, very vulnerable and susceptible to imprinting. But just noticing that, being mindful of that process and that phenomenon. And again, having that don't know mind or beginner's mind to sort of check in and see, well, is that really what's going on right now? How do I know? Could I create more space through my mindfulness and my witnessing of what's arising? Then in these swelling and ebbing currents, these deepening tides moving out, returning, I will sing to you as no one ever has, streaming through widening channels into the open sea. So maybe just take a moment and drop into that. That flow of what it's like to have freedom when we're being mindful of our emotions and not attaching to them. Sort of grasping on the ones that we want. For example, I could think about someone that I am supposed to meet later, that I'm not sure if I'm going to meet them, and there's a bit of anxiety in there, a little bit of dread, there's a little bit of a story that's emerging about, oh, just like everyone else, they really don't like you or they don't want to be with you. And then I can be mindful of that, and instead of sort of creating that story and feeling, while I am being mindful and recognizing that my chest is tightening a little bit about that, like with that ebb and flow, I can sort of take a breath and create a little bit of space so that I can recognize that that's just a feeling. That's a story that I have. May or may not be true. I don't know. As of right now, I'm still supposed to meet this person later, so probably I will. And if I don't, then causes and conditions, meaning, it wasn't meant to be for now. So a mindful stance when it comes to our emotions will often have us recognizing when, for example, we really want something as well. Not just on the aversive side where we want to push something away, but when something's coming up for us that we really say, gee, I'm looking for another experience as opposed to the one that's present before me. I'm looking for the experience of satisfaction. If I really want ice cream or cookies or something, I really want something sweet. I want something to give me some kind of nurturance. So mindfulness of feelings lets us just sit and breathe, notice what's arising in our body, and then sort of say to ourselves, okay, that's also what's here right now. Can I be with this? Can I turn toward it with a loving awareness? And just give myself a moment to notice that it's okay, and that in that mindfulness, in that loving awareness, and creating that space, that emotion, it too will pass. It is not who I am. It is not the story I need to tell myself. But for the moment that it's present, I can be present with it and treat it with a loving awareness and care. So thank you for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.